I needed some coffee. I need to get my hat, too. But, so for the intro here, to explain this one, we're going to have to explain that this is the killer version of the other tier list that I did. I did a survivor tier list. And this is the killer version of it. But the killer version works different than the survivor version. You see, a lot of people like to say that killers run the game. Survivor mains will say that killers have the power. Killer mains will say survivors have the power. There's no denying it, though. 9 times out of 10, survivors have the advantage. Just period. Survivors have the advantage. And, I mean, between the amount of vaults, windows, pallets, between how survivor perks work compared to killer perks, I would say that there's less meta survivor perks to run than there are killer. I think killers have a lot more perk options at their disposal, but killer perks are very dependent upon the killer you're running them on. So, you know, for example, killers that can use certain perks well, like Huntress can use Iron Maiden, which other killers can't get as much value out of. They can, but not as much. Same thing with someone like the Pig. The Pig can get more value out of Surge than the Demogorgon can. These are examples of like how not every killer can get the same value out of perks. And because most killers tend to be pack mentality and just, I run this perk, it's meta. Ugh. Me hit you with club. You die. Me use OP perk. I mean, survivors do the same thing, but it feels more ridiculous when a killer does it, because the killer is kind of like, the killer is the one doing the damage. The killer is the one downing you. So as a survivor, it feels less satisfying. But we're going to do the same thing as before. To explain the tiers of perks that we have the E tier. This is garbage at higher levels. So this is perks that may be good for beginners, but once you figure out where everything is, this perk becomes absolutely useless at a higher level. It's like a training wheels perk. The D tier is different. So this is a perk that is effective, but in one very specific situation that makes it hard to pull off, or it only works on one killer. I like to call this the one killer perk tier. And there's a few perks that you may say, well, they belong in this category. No, they don't. The C tier is effective, but lacking, so it works only in a specific situation. They're situational perks, but they do their job well. So, like, a situational perk that only comes up in one situation and does its job decent, that's going to be a D tier perk. A situational perk that works in, like, one situation, but it does it outstandingly well, is going to be a C tier perk. You have the B tier perks that they're good, but they're not, like, they don't help you win the game. And then you have A tier perks, which are your meta ones. And again, I'm going to disagree with a lot of people compared to how my tier list is set up. There's going to be a lot more good perks. There's going to be a lot more A and B tier perks than people would expect. So, let's start. It is a Nurse's Calling, not Nurse's Calling, but it is going to be our first S tier perk. Because Nurse's Calling, for short, not a Nurse's Calling for short, a Nurse's Calling for long, is just so strong, because what it does is it lets you see survivors who are in your terror radius healing. Works best on stealth killers. Every single killer in the game can get value out of this. Yes, it gets countered by distortion, but that's about all it gets countered by. Either that or just them healing really fast. This lets you know that there is a very weak survivor that you need to go over and show what a big, strong man you are. This is basically the porno perk. This is the Mr. Kool-Aid perk. The Kool-Aid man. Oh yeah! You injured? Let's get you on a hook! I mean, it's OP, but anyways. Agitation. Agitation is a B tier perk. People would say it's not. Agitation is one of those perks that helps you reduce your downtime in the game. So it's a perk that you move bodies faster. So if you're holding a survivor, you move faster. Now on faster killers, this is good. This means that maybe I can take you to a further away hook. Maybe I can take a hit or hit a survivor or two and still have enough time to get you to the hook. It basically helps guarantee hooks a little bit easier, but it still is counterplay to it. The fact that it increases your terror radius is nice on killers that want to do that. if you don't want to increase your terror radius, if you're a stealth killer and you're running this just to increase your terror radius, it doesn't really matter in that situation, because you're going to go back into stealth as soon as you're done carrying a body. But it's a good solid perk. It reduces downtime. Barbecue and chili. Oh god, this ain't a fucking meta perk. I don't know the definition of it. Every fucking killer and their cousin runs this damn perk. It's good. It is an anti-camping perk. It incentivizes you to go after other survivors. Do not just sit there like a fucking Insidious Leatherface. And yet Insidious Leatherfaces run this perk all the time. Anyways, basically it reveals survivors' auras to you if they are further than 40 meters away from the hook when you hook a survivor, and it can double your blood points, like We're Gonna Live Forever. That alone is reason enough to put it there, because again, it's We're Gonna Live Forever for killer. The other reasoning is because, well, it's an aura reveal. And a strong one at that. It lets you see what people are doing. It's good. Bitter Murmur. Bitter Murmur is a C tier perk. Yes, it is. Bitter Murmur gives you a reward for not doing your job. But the reward it gives you is valuable if you know how to use it. So each time a generator is repaired, all survivors within 16 meters of the gen are revealed for 5 seconds, and then all survivors are just revealed for 10 seconds. It's Dark Sense for the killer. Now, Dark Sense is a B tier perk for survivors because Dark Sense doesn't require you as a survivor to complete the gen. This is a B tier perk, a C tier perk for the killer, because it's giving you information as to what survivors are doing after you let them complete the gen. Your job is to apply pressure. Your job is to keep them from doing the generators, and you failed. So now you get to see what generators they're going to, so you can stop them from doing that gen. Problem. You only get this perk to activate because you let them do the gen. If you're a killer that can get 4 O's before a gen pops, Bitter Murmur has no use to you. Blood Warden. Oh. This is such a situational perk. It's an A tier perk though. It really is. I'm sorry. This is like adrenaline for killer. That's how I'll compare this. The situation where it comes in play is rare. So first off, the gates have to be open. Or a gate has to be open. And then you have to hook a survivor. And then for the next 60 seconds, no one can leave except out the hatch. Which requires either a key, or there only to be 1 survivor remaining. Which means that someone has died on hook. Now, the value of this is if you time this perk properly, you can guarantee that all of the survivors are dead. So if you hook a survivor after the last half of the endgame collapse timer, you're guaranteed to kill them unless they find a key and get out the hatch. But that's your only salvation. They cannot get out for 60 seconds. You are literally able to sit there and laugh at the puny mortals in front of you. It is the evilest perk in the game if you can get it to work. And it combos well with other perks like Remember Me and Noed. But the downside is it's very hard to activate. But if you can pull it off, it's a winner chicken dinner. Bloodhound. This is a decent tracking perk. I would put this as a C tier perk. It is not the best tracking perk in the game, but what it does is good. It makes it so that blood trails can be considerably easier to track. They are glowing, tracking pools of blood. And they are tracked for longer than normal. Realistically, you don't need to run this perk in order to track blood, but it can be helpful. That's why it's in C tier. It's not really a perk that, like, one killer gets the value out of, but it's decent enough. I would say it's a decent perk. Brutal Strength. This is another time saver perk. It is a B tier perk. It is a perk that lets you break pallets and gens faster. So how you're going to be using this perk is it lets you just destroy things in the middle of a chase. You can break a pallet in the middle of a chase and not really have to worry about losing too much distance between you and the survivor. You can take a gen faster, you can apply whatever you're doing. It's really just going to cut down your downtime so you can get back into chasing survivors, killing survivors, as opposed to, I need to loop this fucking pallet because it takes so long to kick. It just cuts down on the time you're out of combat, basically. Chlorophobia. I don't know. It is a C tier perk. There is no greater healing penalty in the game than tier 3 Chlorophobia. 50% healing speed penalty. But it only works in your terror radius, so it doesn't work on stealth killers, and it doesn't work on Freddy if you're in the lullaby. And survivors, if they know there's chlorophobia, just don't heal. They'll go away and heal. Now, it's a great perk if you can get it to work. It's just not going to happen, though. If a survivor sees chlorophobia, they're not going to heal if they're smart. If they are healing against chlorophobia, you have a potato survivor, and the perk doesn't really have any value. You shouldn't be losing that. Cruel Limits. Oh my god, this perk is fucking garbage. Okay. Cruel Limits is an E tier perk. Cruel Limits value is that it blocks off a vault location within a 24-meter radius of a generator that has been completed. So, it is bitter murmur, but worse. It rewards you for fucking up and letting them pop a gen, but the reward is you're blocking off vault locations. So, it lets you see what gen was popped, basically, based off of what areas are blocked off. It doesn't block pallets. Why? Why do I run this perk? Why? Usually, you're only going to be blocking off 1 or 2 vault locations. There's very few maps where there's a gen situated within 24 meters of like 3 to 4 or 4 or 5 vault locations. Not going to happen. Pallets still exist. Not only that, the survivor just has to walk away from that area and go to another part of the map. And the thing is, because there's no gen to complete in the area, there's no reason for the survivor to stay there. So this perk only works if you then can chase them back to that part of the map within the 30 seconds it stays blocked. It's not a good perk. I'm sorry. It's not. Dark Devotion. This is a relatively memey build. It's a D tier perk. You can get usage out of it. Basically, you transfer your terror radius to your obsession when you hit your obsession with a basic attack for 30 seconds. Now, this works well on a perk that causes you to rapidly change obsessions. Dying Light plays well with this, but you need either Nemesis, which is an Oni perk that hasn't yet released, or Furtive Chase. Or the killer has to run Decisive. Or, I'm sorry, the survivor. Yeah. Imagine if a killer could run Decisive Strike. Jesus Christ. Imagine a survivor has to run Decisive for this perk to realistically work. And again, now here's the other thing. If your obsession doesn't heal and you're downing them, and you're transferring the terror radius to them, now, in order to take advantage of the perk, you have to slug them. And you have to run around for 30 seconds and try and get other people down. It's one of those perks that it's going to work the first time you use it, and then after that, it's like the rest of the survivors are going to catch on. But you can get some use out of it. You just got to play around. It's a solid D tier perk, if there is such a thing as a solid D tier perk. Distressing, it's a C tier perk. People would say, why would you want to run Distressing? It's a blood point gain, at the very least. If you run it on a Wraith, it's fucking hilarious because you have no terror radius, and then you uncloak, and there's this massively large terror radius. It'd be kind of funny on stealth killers. Gives you bonus blood points, and it increases your terror radius by a lot. So, it makes it so that if you're playing around a build that requires a large terror radius, it works well. But you have to run another perk to really make it effective if you're going for that. It does its job. It gives you more blood points and deviousness. And it increases your terror radius. There's nothing really you can say on that. Increasing your terror radius also has the advantage of giving you a little bit extra stealth if you're not a stealth killer. So, like, if I'm a Leatherface, right, and I'm running Distressing, if they hear a terror radius, they're thinking killer's near. With Distressing, because the terror radius is larger, they don't really know where you are. It's a little bit confusing as to where you actually are, because you have such a large terror radius. If they know you have Distressing, then yeah, it's pretty interesting. Dying Light. This is a B tier perk. Now, Dying Light does give a potentially substantial action speed penalty for healing, repair, and sabotage. It's 3% per token. The downside to this perk is A, the perk only affects 3 people. It does not affect the obsession. B, you only get a token by hooking non-obsessions. And C, you are giving the obsession a massive altruism boost. 33% action speed to unhook and heal. We'll just call it altruism. 33%. You are giving them botany knowledge tier 3. You are giving them better than leader tier 3. You're giving one person a massive altruism bonus to penalize the others. Your obsession is not affected by this. Your obsession is not affected by the action speed penalty. Your obsession does not get penalized by being hooked. You lose this perk if the obsession dies. There's a lot of risk. It's a slowdown perk in every sense of the word. It's designed to slow the game down, but it's not designed to win the game. And that's where the value is. If you're relying on Dying Light to win you the game, you won't. You won't get it. If you're relying on it to slow the game down long enough for you to kill a couple of people, it's good. But the value is, if you once you've killed your first survivor with Dying Light, now there's only 2 people that get affected by it. And if you kill another person because you're trying to save the obsession for the end, Dying Light is only affecting 50% of the remaining people. And if you make the mistake of killing your obsession early in the game, you completely lose the bonus for the rest of the game, unless someone runs DS. Or there's Nemesis. Which, again, hasn't released yet. It's on the PTB. But it's still a good slowdown perk. I can't deny it. Next, we have Franklin's Demise. This is an A-tier perk. I'm sorry. I don't care what people say. Franklin's Demise is A-tier. There is a reason for this. Gen speeds in the game are fucking insane for survivors. 80 seconds to do a gen. To do all 5 gens, it's 400 seconds. People run toolboxes, and that cuts down the amount of time. Franklin's denies them toolboxes. Franklin's denies flashlights. Franklin's denies keys. Franklin's denies medkits. Whatever you're holding in your hand, Franklin says no, fuck you, and takes it away from you. It's the equivalent of being put into a timeout with your item, pretty much. Franklin's is evil. Does it do anything to help you win the game? Not a fucking thing. But it's nice to see a lobby full of people running items and go, oh, that's cute. Say bye-bye to your flashlight, buddy. The downside is a lot of killers can't use it. So, I mean, why is it a meta perk? Because it's fucking annoying to go up against if you're a survivor. And there are survivors that will just sit there and try and run back and get your item, their item, because of how they want that item. If you have like a survivor that's not running self-care and their teammates are not healing them, you've essentially fucked them into no mither because of Franklin's. Furtive Chase. Ugh. It's a D tier. I like Furtive Chase. It has no value except on a small terror radius killer, and because it only reduces terror radius in chase, it's not helpful. When you're out of chase, your terror radius goes back up, so it's not good. And again, you only get tokens off of hooking your obsession, and when someone unhooks your obsession, they become the obsession, so you go after them instead, which makes it good for make your choice. because it makes you one-shot them, so you can put them on the hook, so then you get another obsession who you can one-shot with Make Your Choice, so that you can put them on the hook. But when the obsession dies, you lose your tokens. So you have to, once again, avoid that one obsession. If you know, you can't switch it, unless someone has DS or Nemesis, which again, hasn't released. That's the problem with a lot of obsession perks right now, is Nemesis is going to come out and massively buff them, but it hasn't released, so a lot of your perks like Fervent Chase may change. Other than that, it's a meme type build. You can run it on good stealth killers. We have Hex Devour Hope. We are just going to call this Devour Hope. We're not going to call it Hex. Devour Hope is a meta perk. This perk is a very bad perk, because it can be cleansed before you ever get to use it. However, if you're lucky enough that it doesn't get cleansed, and you can get 3 unhooks and you're 24 meters away, everyone's exposed. And if you can somehow get 5 unhooks further than 24 meters away, you can mori people, which greatly cuts down the amount of time. The problem is, survivors see a Hex Totem, Survivor cleanses Hex Totem. It realistically is bait. It can protect another Hex Totem if they cleanse it, but it means you don't get the value of the perk. And the value of the perk only comes in when you have 3 or 5 tokens. That being said, you can very quickly end a fucking game if you can get Devour up to 3 tokens. Like, 3 tokens, they cleanse the totem or they're dead. We have Hex Haunted Ground. This is a B tier perk. Haunted Ground has 2 very distinctive uses. One is a very limited time exposed effect. It's 60 seconds of all survivors being exposed. It's basically a tier 3 Myers, but on any killer. It also protects your Hex Totems. This perk, however, by itself is incredibly weak. It doesn't do anything except that 60-second exposed timer. Except maybe making the survivors think you're running more Hex Totems, which is just going to make them cleanse more Hex Totems. And it has the benefit, it has the negative of, once they cleanse the totem, the perk loses all value. And you don't get to benefit from the perk any further. It's done. It's a one and done perk that you use to protect your totems, and hopefully you can get a few downs with it. People would say, oh, it's situational. No, it's not. Hex Huntress Lullaby. Oh, boy. Now, this perk is very situational. First off, it is a slowdown perk because when the survivors fail a skill check, it adds an additional 6% regression penalty. So they now have a 16% regression penalty in total for failing a skill check. And it also makes skill checks easier to fail because there's this, the notification of a skill check gets smaller and smaller and smaller until there's no sound effect. But you can have this perk cleansed immediately, and it loses all value, like any Hex perk. But the value is significant. This perk can be more devastating than Ruin, because you have to sit there and look at your screen. If you have a stealth killer with Huntress Lullaby, who's able to grab you off a gen because you're looking at the screen, not paying attention to the killer, like Ghostface with Huntress Lullaby, is broken. It can be worse than Ruin. If I'm grabbing people off of gens and getting free tokens for Huntress Lullaby, oh my god, it's genius. But if they cleanse it, the perk is useless. Hex Noad. Just call it Noad. This is the get out of jail free card for any killer that fails. It's a meta perk, just like Huntress, just like Devour. Because what the perk does is it lets you back clean up if they pop all the gens. If you let them get all the gens done, as long as there's a dull totem on the map, congratulations, you just got your get out of jail free card, and you can down as many survivors as you like by gently tapping them once. Yeah, they can cleanse it, but it's just not good. It's not a good enough perk. It's a cheap perk. It's a I have failed, so reward me type perk, but because of how fucking powerful it is, it has to be a meta perk. Hex Ruin, the absolute #1 slowdown perk in the game, without a question. Do not pass go, do not collect $200, ruin or bust. It does not matter if they cleanse it. They have taken time away to cleanse it. The only situation where ruin is not effective is if they spawn next to the ruin and they cleanse it like 10 seconds into the game. If you've gone a minute into the game and your ruin is still up, it did its job. As long as you get over the 1 minute mark with ruin, it has done its job because it has slowed the game down by at least a minute. You don't have gens popping immediately. Either that, or they're really good survive with friends, or they just know how to play around ruin. Ruin's downside is that because it's so commonplace, people do know how to play around it. They just choose not to half the time. The last hex perk, well, the last purple hex perk, Third Seal. Third Seal is a C tier perk. It is decent in that it gives blindness. If you have it at tier 3, you can blind all of the survivors with aura for aura blindness. That's what it does, though. It impairs aura reading. Now, that can be deadly, or it can be not so deadly. It's just... it's a meme. It can be an effective meme if you're running a build for it, and it's kind of annoying to go up against. But it's also a hex perk, so it gets cleansed, and you have nothing to use it on. So, there you go. Infectious Fright. Oh god, Infectious Fright. I used to hate this perk with a passion. I didn't think it was that great. But... I don't know. It's a decent enough, it's a decent enough tracking perk. The downside to this perk is that it's only a notification. It's not like an aura reveal. But it still is a decent amount of tracking. Oni's going to be able to exploit the shit out of this perk when he comes out. But it's not particularly great. It's not the greatest thing in the world. It's just decent if you're trying to play a rushdown style. Insidious, this is a garbage tier perk. This is a I am going to camp you type perk. It's not of any substance. It is simply there for camping. There's a few situations where you can use it outside of camping. You are not, like, going to get value out of this perk, however, unless you're camping. Like, believe it or not, this gives you value at the beginning of the game because you're standing still. Like, when you're loading into a game, you actually have Insidious active at the start of the game. Because you're standing still while the intro is going. So it, like, counters Object of Obsession at the beginning of the game. That's the only value you're going to get out of Insidious, pretty much out of camping. Out of just, like, standing still in one spot to, like, hide your aura. I mean, if you think the survivors are running something that reveals your aura, maybe you just stand still so Insidious hides it. I would not recommend that. I wouldn't do it. But, there you go. There you have it. It's good. Iron Maiden, that's a D tier perk. It offers decent tracking, and it offers an insta-down when survivors try and play around lockers when they try and get in and out of lockers. Huntress, this is the one-trick pony type situation where Huntress is going to get the most value out of this. Most killers are not going to get the value out of this. It means Huntress reloads faster. This is another perk. I think Oni's going to get a lot of perk out of this right now, because right now, from what's been going on PTB, Oni gets countered by just going into a locker. Like, when everyone hears Oni has his power, you just jump into a locker, and he has to pull someone out, and it removes his power. So, Iron Maiden gives him some strength, because if they want to play around that, they're going to be able to do that. I don't recommend it. It is funny, but most killers in the game are not going to be able to get to that locker unless it's, like, right next to you. Like, if someone is trying to head on you, then Iron Maiden can work, because if you recover from the stun and you can get to them before they can get to a loop, it's nice, but that's a very situational thing. That's why I have it D tier. Lightborn, again, this is going to be a D tier perk. This is something that, like, Wraith and Nurse are going to get the most value out of because you can burn them out of their power with it. So this increases how long it takes. If you're afraid of getting flashlight blinded, this is your training wheels type perk to run. Until you learn as a killer how to avoid flashlights. I wouldn't necessarily say, like, it's a good perk. Like, the higher up you go on the food chain for this game, the less and less Lightborn becomes, unless you're just that afraid of flashlights. Like, if you see four people with flashlights, and you're like, fuck this, I don't have time for this, and just slap on Lightborn. But even then, even with Lightborn, there's still situations where 2 survivors in your face with flashlights are going to be able to get that stun with Lightborn and free someone. If a survivor's determined enough, they're gonna get the flashlight save. Unless you know how to position yourself, so Lightborn becomes ineffective there. The value is for Wraith and Nurse, so they don't get burned out of their power as much. But that's why it's D tier, because it's the one-trick pony type category. Mad Grit, this is a C tier perk. This is one of your go-to perks if you're going for basement build. If you're going for, I need to get a survivor from point A to point B, and I don't want anyone in between me from stopping me. This perk doesn't help with flashlights or pallet saves. Bear that in mind. This perk helps with body blocking. It fits in the designated build of, like, Agitation and Iron Grasp and Monstrous Shrine, but that's a meme build at this point. For competitive viability, it's decent if you know you're going against Survive with Friends. If you're a killer and you load in and 4 people immediately load into the game, yeah, it's good. If you see 4 Ash Williams and you're saying, well, somebody's going Adept Ash, this can help, but the situations it's useful becomes limited. Make your choices a meta perk for me. That's an A tier perk, hands down. It is designed to be an anti-altruism, anti-camping perk. It's designed, you have to go away from the hook. You have to be 32 meters away. They have to get somebody off the hook. And then for the next 60 seconds, if you whack the person that made the unhook, they go down instantly. Now, all exposed effects have the same effect of limiting your pipping because you don't get the necessary amount of hits from maliciousness. But it helps end the game quicker, because it does help get you hooks. Make your choices great, because it does... It's kind of random in a way. Because if you're playing the game the correct way of hook a survivor, run to the other side of the map to protect gens, if you do decide to come back and take advantage of it, then it can be effective. I would say a good survivor can make this perk useless if they know how to loop for long enough, or if they can just be stealthy for long enough, but if you can get it to work, it's basically a guaranteed way to get insta-downs, if you know how to use it properly, and because it punishes altruism in a game where survivors have the advantage, and punishing altruism's one of your biggest advantages, it's awesome. Mindbreaker is garbage tier. Mindbreaker is absolute garbage tier. There is not a single killer in the game that can benefit from this, in my opinion. People say, I've heard some people say, like, stealth killers, like Wraith or Demogorgon, or Mike or Ghostface, they can get some value out of this. No. The fact that the only exhaustion perk that this is really going to affect is Sprint Burst. It's not really going to affect Balance Landing. It's not really going to affect Life as much. I mean, Sprint Burst is that instant, you press L1, you dash away. So you're not going to be able to Sprint Burst off the gen. And the fact that the exhaustion timer is paused when you're working on a gen, but only until the gen reaches 50%, means if you run Prove Thyself, it's even less. And the fact that Vigil actually takes a half a second off the 3 seconds is insane, because that means that Vigil is actually effective against this perk, which is weird. But hey, it's just not good. I could not recommend running it. Monitor and Abuse is a B tier perk. It is not as good for increasing your FOV as Shadowborn maybe, but it is good because it gives you a decent way to change your terror rates. If you put this on a small terror radius killer, you're going to be even sneakier. If you put this on a large terror radius killer, it gives you a little bit of extra stealth until you get into a chase, and then your terror radius gets bigger, and it gives you a little bit of stealth to survivors that you're not chasing, because you're not going to be targeting them directly, but they may think it. And the FOV increase only applies, by the way, when you're not in chase. Some people don't understand that at lower tiers, so to make that clear, the people that don't see the "and" in the middle, right there, yeah, that means that you get the FOV increase when you're not in chase. That means when you are in chase, you're not getting the FOV increase. It's still a decent perk. It works well on stealth killers. If you can make a build for it, it's great, but it's just a solid perk to run. Monstrous Shrine, the days of Monstrous Shrine are over. Monstrous Shrine was really only been good as a meme for basement build. Monstrous Shrine has really only been good in a situation where you need to hook them in the basement. Monstrous Shrine is not good because basically it means they can't get off the hook on their own, and it makes them die on the hook slightly faster. It pretty much only works. It's countered by another survivor getting them off hook. And it's countered by deliverance. So right there, it's counterable. Not to mention it only works on those basement hooks, and you're rarely going to get people on the basement hooks unless they're near the basement. Overcharge is a decent perk because Overcharge is a way that you can regress a gen, get a notification about what gen people are trying to work on, and it gives the survivor an added annoyance to deal with. But two downsides. One, you have to kick the gen, so it doesn't work all the time. If you're not kicking gens, you're not applying overcharge. And two, survivors can just simply hit it. The little description below it is probably best. It's a trap, but a trap that one must step in. Yeah, but the question is, if they step in the trap, and then step out of the trap, it's no longer a trap. It's very solid. I think it's a B tier perk just because it adds an extra 5% regression, so again, it's another slowdown perk, and it lets you know, someone touched that gen, go back and kick it again. Next perk that we have is Play With Your Food. I would put Play With Your Food in the D tier. The only real value you're going to get off of this perk is going to be on slow killers who need a way to catch up because of an M1 situation. The fact that you lose your tokens when you attack, whether you hit or miss, and if you use your power, you'll lose it sometimes. But it's one of the only movement speed perks in the game for killer, which is what makes it valuable. But because of how easy it is to lose it, you only get tokens from chasing a survivor and letting them go. It has to be one specific survivor, and you lose your tokens when you hit someone, or when you swing at someone and miss. That's why it's D tier. Pop Goes the Weasel, A tier. The absolute value of this perk comes from your ability to instantly regress gens. There is an activation cost. You have to hook a survivor. But you can walk over to any gen and go boom, boom, croissant, and that gen is done. That gen is reduced fast. And because gen regression and slowing the game down is what killer wants to do with their perks, Pop Goes the Weasel is premium. It lasts for 60 seconds after you hook somebody, and you kick a gen, and that gen goes bye-bye. If you kick a gen below 50%, it's pretty much toast. If you kick a gen that's almost done, it's pretty much down to 50% again. Because unless they get right back on the gen, and you can stack this with overcharge, they're not expecting it, they go to tap the gen to stop the regression, boom! There's another regression. Now that's 40% regression on that gen. So it does combo well with other perks. I would say it's just the downside is it has a hefty activation cost. You have to hook the survivor. Not down the survivor, not injure a survivor, not hit a survivor. You have to hook them. If you can't get the hook, you can't get the perk. Rancor, B tier perk. It's a bit of a get out of jail free card like Noed, but it's on one person, the Obsession, and it's a Mori and an insta-down. So it's a good way to confirm a kill on someone. Pretty much if they pop all of the generators, you get to Mori that one person. You get to fuck that one survivor over. Now, if there's no Obsession, because they died and no one else has become the Obsession since then the perk is just a low-budget tracking perk. It's better than something like Bitter Murmur because you get the additional effect. And the whole thing with the your Obsession sees your aura for 3 seconds is not really that big of a deal. I mean, Dark Sense, if the survivor runs Dark Sense, they're not going to know you have Rancor then. Because they're going to think, oh, it's Dark Sense. So, it does actually have a decent amount of stealth on that. So, Rancor is, it's pretty good. Remember Me. This is a bit of a meme. It's an C tier perk. Remember Me allows you to slow down the opening of the exit gates based off of how much you hit your Obsession. It's similar to Dying Light because your Obsession's not affected by it. It only affects the other 3 people. But realistically, the extra 16 seconds is only good on a killer that's able to capitalize on being able to pinball between exit gates. Or if you're trying to slow the gates down so you can get Blood Warden up. Other than that, it's not really worth running too many of the same endgame perks unless you're planning on the gens being completed. So if you're not running Ruin or Pop, you're planning on like, okay, Noed, Remember Me, Blood Warden, I'm gonna fuck these guys up, man, when they get to the endgame. But you can't guarantee that you're gonna get that kill with Remember Me. Remember Me is not a guarantee. And if you don't hit the Obsession the entire time up until the end, it doesn't work. Because it doesn't work like, they're in the process of opening a gate. Haha, I've now hit the Obsession and it will take you 4 seconds long. That doesn't work like that. If they're already opening the gate, they don't get the penalty. Save the best for last. I hate this perk. I personally hate this perk. It's a D tier perk for me because of how much I hate this perk. I hate this perk because it encourages killers not to use their fucking power. Basically, there is an Obsession. For every survivor that is not the Obsession that you M1, you must go faster. You get Jeff Goldblum status. Must go faster. Problem. You're encouraging a killer not to use their power. You're telling the killers, hey, don't use your power on this one guy. So if you are a Demogorgon, or a Billy, or a Leatherface, you're not going to be using your power on the Obsession. Which means, because you don't want to lose your stacks, it means you're going to be downing them with your... You're going to be downing everyone else with your M1. So you've got 3 people that you don't want to use your power on, or Save the Best for Last doesn't work. And you got 1 person that you can't use your M1 on, because then you lose Save the Best for Last. It is such an odd perk. The benefit it gives you is nice. The benefit it gives you is that, well, you will recover faster from successful attacks. You don't have that cooldown in chase. You deny the survivors as much time to escape you as they normally would. It's just not good because it negates your power on killers. Shadowborn is a C tier perk. It is a nice perk. It increases your FOV, and it makes it so that you can see easier. Realistically, you don't need this perk, and it doesn't stack with other FOV increases like Monitor and Abuse, so it doesn't provide a great benefit to you. Basically, this is, if a survivor is in the corner of your eye, if you would have run Shadowborn, you would see it. If you don't run Shadowborn and you don't see it, maybe that's a free chase. But it's very hard to tell if you would have like seen that with or without Shadowborn, depending on how you play killer. Spies from the Shadows. Ugh. Really conflicted on this. I would say it's a D tier perk. So, the value of this perk is that survivors who trigger this perk are not expecting it. It's not a perk a lot of people expect. It's a beginner perk for knowing how to pay attention to crows going off. But it also works anytime a crow goes off. Which means you could be setting it off. Now it's guaranteed to work 100% of the time, which is a buff from what it used to be. And it has a cooldown of 5 seconds, which is minimal. But it also only works in a 36-meter range, which generally survivors within 36 meters give away their position based off of other actions. So Spies from the Shadows doesn't get value, but Spies from the Shadows can be valuable. It's a low budget tracking perk. People aren't going to expect it, they're not going to see it coming, they're not going to plan for it. Another problem, completely countered by Calm Spirit. Completely. I mean, yeah. Surveillance is a good perk. This is a B tier perk for me. The value of this perk comes in you kicking a gen. It is going to let you know once that gen has been touched. So when you kick a gen, once the regression on it has stopped, because a survivor touched it, or it went down to 0, then the gen turns to yellow. So it's basically a glowing notification saying, survivors are fucking with me, come save me, daddy, to the killer. That's what the gen is telling you. Come save me! Ow, these mean survivors are hitting skill checks on me, no! It's a good tracking perk to let you know what gens are being worked on, but there's two situations. One, if you're in a chase with another survivor, you're not leaving that chase to go kick the gen, unless it's like the last gen and you need to protect it. Two, it only works if you kick the gen. You're not applying this if you don't kick the gen. Period. Territorial Imperative, garbage tier. Absolute, just hands down, garbage tier. This perk's value is, I don't want people going in the basement. I am further away. I'm so far away that only a few killers can get there. And it has a cooldown on top of that. All it does is reveal the aura to you when you go in the basement. When they're in the basement. So if you are a nurse, a spirit, a billy, an oni, a hag with add-on increases, you're going to be able to get back to the basement in time to take advantage of this. All other killers will get 0 benefit. None. They can't get to the basement fast enough to capitalize on it, realistically. And the knowledge it gives you is, oh yeah, they're touching my chest. Wow. Sanity Phobia. This is going to be a B tier perk. It's good because it lets you slow the game down by injuring survivors. So in order to remove their action speed penalties, they have to heal. They have to waste time healing. The downside to this perk is that if they heal, the perk doesn't get value. The perk only has value if they stay injured. So it works best on a killer that wants you to stay injured, or it works best on a killer who's able to keep people injured constantly. Or a one-shot killer where you're not going to spend time healing because you know you're going to get one-shot. So it has a decent amount of play to it, and it has a good value, but it's just removed by healing. Their full health, you don't get to use the perk. That's the only real drawback to it. It's good when it works. Generally, you have to pair it with another perk to get value. Thrilling Tremors is a good perk. That's a B tier perk. I don't think a lot of people understand how to use Thrilling Tremors. I see a lot of people using Thrilling Tremors to block off gens for 16 seconds. That's not the value of this perk. Period. You're not going to be using it to keep people from working on gens. If they're already on a gen, it's not being blocked. So they don't have to leave that gen. They just wait for the survivor to get picked up, then they leave the gen. So what it does is it lets you know what gens are being worked on currently, or were being worked on when you picked up the survivor. So it lets you know what gen to kick with pop. This is basically barbecue and chili, but for generators. And I don't think a lot of people really think of Thrilling Tremors that way. They don't think of it as barbecue and chili for generators. They think of it as like, oh, it blocks off gens, it's good for slowing the game down. If they pop a gen, they can't work on another gen until it goes away. No. Think of it more as barbecue and chili for generators instead of survivors, and you're good. And that's why it becomes valuable. Tinkerer. This is a solid perk. It is a B tier perk. So it gives you stealth when survivors get a gen to 85%. This can turn any killer into a stealth killer, and it can let you defend a gen, because it lets you know what gen is getting worked on. The downside is most killers cannot take advantage of the benefit of Tinkerer to get to the gen to stop it. With, like, Pop Goes the Weasel. Like, if you're running Tinkerer and Pop, so that, oh, they're on this gen, I need to get over there quick and kick it. Generally, the gen is going to be completed before you can get there. The value is that it gives you stealth, so if you're in chase when someone is trying to pop a generator, you get the ability to maybe trade a gen for a down. Or trade a gen for, you know, grabbing someone off a Hex Totem. Something like that is what it's more used for. It's more used for giving you a notification where the survivors are working on gens. Because if they're working on a gen on this side of the map right here, you know that when they leave that gen, they're going to another gen. More than likely. Unrelenting. This is a garbage tier perk. I am of the belief that if you miss a swing, it's your fault. You should take the missed attack recovery time with a grain of salt and use that as a learning experience where you can hit. Sometimes you're going to miss a swing. Sometimes the survivor's going to dead hard. Sometimes they're going to have a sprint burst. Sometimes they're going to balance landing away. You can't... Unrelenting lets you recover from that, but you don't want to run a perk that's telling you, I'm going to miss, I'm going to miss, I'm going to miss, I'm going to miss, I'm going to miss. If it worked off of powers as well, like a Demogorgon Shred, that could make it more viable, but it doesn't. I think right now it's just bad. You shouldn't be running this perk, period, unless you think you can't hit. Whispers is a very solid tracking perk. This is a B tier perk. You have to know how to use it. Basically, any survivors within 32 meters of you, and the little HUD icon of Whispers will light up and say, you know, it's active. So, survivors are going to... They're not going to know that you're tracking them with it. And a good killer that knows how to use Whispers is going to understand where a survivor is. The downside is that it works against survivors on hook, it works against survivors on the ground, it works against survivors in lockers, and you're not going to know that they're in a locker unless you run Iron Maiden with it, and then get out of it. But, if you know how to track with Iron Maiden, you're like, okay, survivors are probably over by that gen that I'm near, I'll go give them a nice hello. Whispers is a great tracking perk. Bamboozle. Oof. This is a B tier perk. So I love how you have Tide Time, who loves this perk, and Otofu, who hates this perk, where you have two high-level killer mains, basically, that think differently of it. One is of the theory that this cuts down chases, and one is of the theory that it extends chases. And I agree with both of them. If a killer has Bamboozle, it means they vault the window faster and they block the vault. So it prevents infinites. And it prevents a survivor from abusing the same loop. The downside is it forces them to the next loop. And certain killers get punished heavily. Clowns and doctors excel at closing loops. If you can take one loop and stretch it to a second, and stretch it to a third, and stretch it to a fourth, and keep a killer busy, perk's not going to be that great for you. The fact that it cuts out infinites, and the fact that they can't abuse the loop for 16 seconds, they have to burn the pallet, or they have to go to another loop, makes it very strong. As a killer, you want that pallet gone. Even if you get stunned by it, you want it gone. That should be your attitude. Your attitude shouldn't be, oh, I got stunned, god damn it, these stupid fucking survivors. But I see a lot of killers do. No. Take the stun, get rid of the pallet. It's gone. That area is now a safe zone. Okay? Anytime a killer gets rid of a pallet, that is a safe zone now. You can chase them, unless there's an infinite window there. And because that's what Bamboozle helps do, it's a B tier perk. Not A tier. It's B tier. Beast of Prey. Oh my god. Beast of Prey is a D tier perk. Is a blood point gain, which takes it out of the E tier territory because it has use, and because it makes you undetectable when you hit Bloodlust. That's good, but you generally are going to want to run a perk that helps you rather than just helps you mind game a survivor when you hit Bloodlust tier 1. And because you lose this when you lose Bloodlust, that means kicking a pallet will instantly remove this perk. So kicking a pallet removes the mind game. And that's what you want to do. You want to kick the pallet. You want to take away and make it a safe zone for you as a killer. So it's not really a good perk. It's good for killers that want to mind game around a pallet without breaking. They want to go ring around the rosy pocket full of poses, ashes, Ash Williams falls down dead type shit. That works. The rest of the time, the perks has no value for you. Corrupt Intervention. Okay. Unpopular opinion time. Corrupt Intervention is the worst slowdown perk in the game for killers. Because it blocks off 50% of the gens, just about, that are farthest away from you. That's good. But any survivors that are not on those 3 gens are not penalized. They don't even know you have the perk. And basically, it buys the survivors 2 minutes to cleanse all the totems, search all the chests, sabo all the hooks, and then when the 2 minutes are up, they can work on the gens. I mean, 2 minutes is a long time for survivors, and if they're playing stealthy and they're avoiding you, basically you have a 2-minute window where if you can get 1 hook, the perk gets value. Are you willing to trade losing all of your totems for 1 down? I'm not. I like Hex perks. I don't like Corrupt Intervention. Corrupt Intervention is a bad perk for me. Deer Stalker. Kind of a cheesy perk. It's a C tier perk. The value on this perk is it lets you slug and not really pay the price for it. It lets you see survivors who are on the ground within 36 meters, which is nice. So you can slug somebody and be confident that as long as they don't have Unbreakable, you can find them and hook them. That's what it does. There are better perks out there, but if you're planning on slugging, Deerstalker works. Discordance. Oh my god, meta A tier. I have seen people shitting on this perk, saying it's a bad perk. This counters gen speeds. This counters the gen speed problem of the game. This and Ruin are the 2 big counters. Because 2 survivors can't work on gens without giving away their position to you. You can go and kill them. So that forces them to work on gens individually. Now, because toolboxes exist and it doesn't really slow that down, it just lets you know when survivors are working together to get gens done. It helps you punish Survive with Friends. It helps you punish Prove Thyself. You know, it helps you punish people who are like, let's just bang this gen out together. No. But it only really works if you take advantage of it. If you're going and disrupting when people are getting on a gen, then it becomes effective. Enduring is another very powerful perk. This is an A tier perk for me. It negates the penalty of being stunned, and if you break the pallet right away, it makes that, again, safe zone. Really, the downside to Enduring is that because it only works on pallets, it doesn't work on head-on, it doesn't work on DS, it doesn't work on flashlights, it doesn't work on any of that stuff. It's become a bit limited over time, but it is still an incredibly solid perk. Fire Up. Fire Up is a C tier perk. Fire Up does have use, contrary to what popular opinion. People are like, oh my god, Fire Up is so bad. Yes, it is a perk that does reward you for failing to do your job and protect your gens. I just think that it's like resilience for a killer. I mean, up to a 20% buff to picking up survivors, dropping survivors, breaking pallets, breaking gens, and vaulting is nice. It's better than Bamboozle. It's the same as Brutal Strength. The downside is, in order for this perk to really be noticeable, 4 or 5 gens are gone. And at that point, you're just batting cleanup as the game goes on. But it can, because it does stack with those perks. You can stack this with Brutal Strength and Bamboozle. You can go fast as fuck, boy, on breaking gens and pallets and vaulting as the game goes on. That's really what you're going to use it for. It's a stackable perk. It's a decent filler perk. If it gave you a movement speed bonus, that would be overpowered. If it gave you an attack speed bonus, that'd be overpowered. But it would make it a bit more viable. Hangman's Trick is garbage. It's E tier. The reason why this perk is bad is because it counters the sabotage meta. The sabotage meta doesn't exist. The only value you get out of this perk, outside of countering the sabotage meta, is that hooks that are destroyed by sacrifice are repaired automatically after 10 seconds. So a Leatherface can take advantage of this by just chainsawing everyone at the same hook, hooking someone, they die on the hook, picking up the survivor, and then hooking them on the same hook. That's about the only value. Thrill of the Hunt. This is going to be a B tier perk for me. So this has 3 benefits. So it's a blood point gain perk. So that's 1. 2 is it slows down how fast it is for a survivor to cleanse a totem. So that's 2. And 3, it gives you a notification of that. Basically, this is like Haunted Ground. That's why it's in the same category as Haunted Ground. You're running this to protect other Hex totems. If you're running this in a blood point build, same thing. If you're running this to mind game survivors and make you think, aha, I am running Noed, Ruin, Devour, etc. That's where the value of the perk comes from. It's a mind game perk, really. I'm all ears. This is going to be a C tier perk. I think it's quite an underrated perk. I think a lot of people don't expect this perk. It's a decent tracking perk. It does have a hefty cooldown of 40 seconds. That limits its use. Any survivor performing a rushed action within 48 meters has their aura revealed. Well, why is this perk good? Who's going to perform a rushed action on you? Well, if you're in a chase, it takes away that mind game. Yes, it has a cooldown on it. So you're really only going to use it once per chase. But it's good in chases. It helps you win mind games in chases. So certain killers are going to get more value out of this. Nurses and legions are going to get more value than, say, pigs and wraiths. But it's there. It is a good mind gaming perk. Iron Grasp, again, this is a C tier perk. Basically, it just lets you guarantee you get a survivor to a hook. It takes them longer to wiggle out. That's what you get. That's the value you get out of Iron Grasp. It's annoying to go up against. It's not really needed. It's mostly there so that you get them on the hook. That's what it does. Now, Knockout. It's a C tier perk. It's going right in there with Third Seal. Basically, it's a slug perk. But if I'm going to slug, Deerstalker's a little bit better if I'm trying to be aggressive. If I'm trying to be defensive, I'm running Knockout so that they can't see where the survivor that I downed went down unless they're right next to me. They have to wait for them to be on hook to see him. This is a solid perk, but it's not anything really outstandingly strong. It's basically like a mind game of where the killer is until they get hooked. Overwhelming Presence is shit. As soon as you see it, you just know to stop using an item. I would say the only time that this perk really has an effect is if you're either using a Blood Amber to see where the killer is, and Overwhelming Presence takes even more of the key away, or if you don't have self-care and you're relying on the medkit to heal, and it prevents you from healing, you have to leave the terror radius and heal. But even then, Chlorophobia does a better job of that than Overwhelming. Predator, I would say this is a D tier perk. It's a good tracking perk, but the fact of the matter is, it causes scratch marks to appear closer together, so it gives you more real-time data as to how old the scratch marks are, rather than how accurate they are. I can run around a pallet in a circle and then crouch walk away, and Predator is confused. It's not that great. It's a decent baby tracking perk. It's a training wheels spirit perk, if you will. Gives you a bit more data, but that's really where most of your value comes from on this perk, if I'm being 100% honest. Sloppy Boogers, Sloppy Butcher. This is an A tier perk. This is the premium slowdown healing speed perk. It's a 25% healing speed penalty. It adds Mangled, so they bleed more. The effect stays until they fully heal. You stack this with Phobia, Dying Light, Chlorophobia, whatever you want to run to slow the game down. They're not going to want to heal against you. It's good for helping tracking, like with Bloodhound. It's great on an Oni, more blood. It's just an all-around solid perk for hitting survivors and killing them, and keeping them from healing, and annoying them, and making them burn medkits and find each other and heal. It pairs very well with other perks that require a second perk, like Chlorophobia, Dying Light, Phobia, but you don't have to run it. If you can run Sloppy Butcher, run Sloppy Butcher. Spirit Fury. This is actually going to be a B tier perk. Spirit Fury lets you automatically break a pallet, and obviously everyone knows the combo of Enduring and Spirit Fury. You can put Spirit Fury in Brutal Strength so you can kick the pallets faster. Basically, the next time you get stunned, it instantly breaks the pallet, so it saves you some downtime. You still eat the stun, which is why you pair it with Enduring, but if you don't pair it with Enduring, it becomes very weak. So, my value on Spirit Fury comes from instantly negating a pallet. You are deleting a pallet from the game instantly. And you only get it by breaking other pallets and removing them. So it lets you create an instant safe zone, particularly on Killer Shack. This is great against Killer Shack, because if you can chase a killer to the Killer Shack and they're like, oh, I gotta burn the God pallet, but you've already kicked 2 pallets and broken them, there you go. You got a free Spirit Fury, buddy. Last 3 perks. Most of these are going to be low tier. So Strider is a D tier perk. The killer that gets the most value out of this is Nurse and Spirit, because they rely on sound to track more. Most killers aren't going to get value out of this, except for stealth killers. Stealth killers can get it, but it's not a requirement. I would say that this perk is good because it counters other perks, other survivor perks. It lets you narrow down where they are if they're injured a lot easier. But you have to be really good in order to use this, unless it's like Spirit or Nurse. Surge is another D tier perk. It is a gen regression perk, but the problem with Surge for me, so it's only an 8% regression. It's not 18. That's the thing a lot of people misunderstand. It's not 10% and then an additional 8. It's just 8% regression. It has a cooldown that it doesn't need, because it only works off M1s. And it only applies if there's a gen within 32 meters. And it goes on cooldown even if you don't damage a gen. Now, whether that's a glitch or not, I don't know, because I do want to mention that. Same thing I said Borrowed Time a while back was a shit perk, because I always went down to it when that was just a glitch. So, in all fairness, if it does not go on cooldown for you when you down someone and there's no gens within 32 meters, then that means I'm bugged. Or you're bugged. Somebody has a bug, though. Hopefully not a stomach bug. The value from Surge is limited. It's basically, you don't have Overcharge and you don't have Pop, so you put on Surge. Because you can't apply Pop or Overcharge with Surge. And even Thrilling Tremors doesn't help you. This perk basically negates those 3 perks, and those 3 perks are better because they all apply more regression than this. Except for Thrilling Tremors, which is like Bark 2. Last one is Unnerving Presence. This is a meme build that requires a very specific build to work. It requires a Terror Radius. It requires a large Terror Radius killer. It requires specific perks. Good survivors will completely ignore this effect unless it's on a doctor, and even then they can probably hit it. And if you run Ruin, you're giving them free Ruin skill checks. So this perk is pretty much trash. Anyways, this perk is not including the 3 Oni perks that are coming out, although I did talk a bit about Nemesis. When those perks get introduced to the game, that will obviously shake up the list a little bit. Particularly Nemesis, that might shake up Dark Devotion and Fervative Chase a little bit, might make those better. We'll see how it is, but thanks for watching. Enjoy.